Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. My goal here is to present you with one-on-one, in-depth conversations with courageous and extraordinarily bold women who have inspirational stories to share. These are women who come from a wide range of backgrounds, but the one thing they do have in common is that they are bold in what they do. And my guest today certainly exemplifies that. These are women who follow their passions and don't allow detractors and naysayers to slow them down. These are women who are more like you and I than not. They have their own struggles and demons and bumps in the road. But what sets them apart from most is that they follow the road less taken. They believe in themselves when perhaps no one else does. When we hear these types of stories from other people, we hear about their success and their triumph over obstacles. That's inspiring because we learn that their path may not always be smooth, even when it might appear so from the outside. By listening to these conversations on the Be Bold podcast, I hope your takeaway is that anything is possible and there's no one right way. We all have the ability to become better versions of ourselves, and those decisions are made every day, every hour, every moment in everything that we do. In these conversations, I'm hoping you'll hear something that makes you want to change and make choices in your life that ultimately makes you happier and more fulfilled. With that, let me tell you about today's guest. Latoya Snell is a runner. She's actually a self-described fat runner, a term that she uses and embraces. Latoya started running on a lark, really just as an agreement with a friend, and she was hooked. Running literally changed her life. She was initially excited because in the process of running, she lost 100 pounds and she got very fit. But what happened was she ultimately realized that just because she was thinner, it didn't make her happier. So she decided to embrace her weight, but she kept running so that she could continue to stay fit. As a fat runner, showing people that one could be fit and fat, she has become an inspiration to many. She started getting national attention with features and mentions in magazines and online, and she now has sponsors that are seeking her out. It's not just that Latoya is a fat runner or that she's okay with the word fat. Those are the only reasons that I consider her bold. It goes far beyond that. She's also really quite open and honest about many things, as you'll hear. And this includes her struggles with health issues, her depression, and her miscarriages. She really is an open book when it comes to the rough times that she's been through, and that in itself is bold in my book. I hope you enjoy this conversation with the beautiful Latoya Snell. So you're saying that your dad was your worst and your best
role model.
And then this whole let's kind of go with that Anthony Bourdain thing because it's such a timely thing. By the time this airs, it will have been some weeks that passed. But yeah, so that hit you hard.
Yeah.
Because you've got a chef background, right? And so you were telling me just before I hit record that he was a role model.
Yeah,
of
he's
yours.
literally like top 5.
Yeah.
He's like top 5. And the thing is, like, when I look at my role models are my role models not so much because of industry wise. It's more or less personality types that I'm drawn to. I have a very extreme personality type myself. I think a lot of us in this industry have that.
The industry meaning the
culinary.
Yeah,
the culinary industry, especially with back of house. Like, well, back of house mentality is kind of like, it's cutthroat. Yeah. It's easy to either sink or swim in the back of house, especially as a woman. You cannot be too soft. You don't want to be too aggressive. If you come off a certain way, then it's like almost like you're being poked or provoked, where you're being accused of being too rough, or you're trying to be like the boys, or you're trying to be masculine. So it's like you have to find your little groove. Where when it came down to Anthony Bourdain, I think more than anything, aside from him being a chef, he was a humanitarian. it was beautiful to be able to see someone actually travel to different places and show an appreciation for their culture, have a respect for the culture, and not try to find this weird way of exploiting it. Because sometimes that happens in our industry where we see something, we borrow, I can't tell you how many times that happened with like recipe books, or where somebody's like, oh, that's a great recipe. They write it down and all of a sudden it becomes the chef's recipe. It's not your recipe anymore. Meanwhile, it came from somebody that didn't speak English, where they're taking something from their own personal culture where they grew up eating this stuff. And now you see it on the menu and it's marked up for $34.95. And it's kind of hurtful because there's no ode to that person that gave you the idea. There's no ode to the culture. There's no odes to anyone. So hearing about his death on, it was like, what, Friday morning?
It was Friday morning, yeah.
Literally, I got pinged by so many people. Like, I stopped counting up to 20. There was so many people between Instagram and Facebook, and literally, like, especially, like, if it recognizes the algorithms of things that you follow, it was like every platform I opened up, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything is crammed with, like, this, he was this great guy and he was a beautiful soul. And I'm just like, this can't be real. I'm like, I'm going to look it up on Snopes.com, I believe it's called. Let me see how real this is. And I was just like in this shock. And my husband just looked at me and he's like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I can't believe this. I was in the, like, I don't know, like this weird state, I want to say, for about 5 minutes where I was like, this can't be real. I'm like, I was just talking about picking up his last book.
Yeah, I know. I have to say, just for honesty's sake, I wasn't a big fan of his because I thought he was irreverent to some cultures, the little that I saw. But I will say that it affected me a lot because I was kind of in that same boat when I first, what I did was I turned on my phone and I opened up Facebook, and you know how I went to actually post something on Facebook because I was in Santa Fe leading a culinary tour, and Facebook opened up, and the first thing that I saw was somebody had written about that, and I was like, what? And then I looked on the news, and I couldn't believe it because I know how beloved he was in the travel world and in the food world, and I respected that tremendously, and I respect that tremendously, and it's a shocker. It is, and it was still a shocker. And the first time I had to say it out loud, I said it to someone because they hadn't heard the news. I choked up because I just thought, I can't even say this out loud because it's so astonishing.
Right.
But I know he also dealt with a lot of demons.
Yeah. And that's a lot of us in this industry. I mean, myself included. I literally, like I just was saying a couple of minutes ago, I literally trained for my first marathon as a functioning alcoholic. I've dealt with depression for I don't know how many years, and I'm still battling with it.
With depression?
Yes.
So how is it? Because part of what we're doing here is to talk about your running because you are a role model to a lot of people. But so let's talk about that. How does a functioning alcoholic, how and why did you start running?
Yeah.
And how do you do that?
Oh, man. So this was completely, like, I want to say, like, most of my career choices or the things that's been thrown into my life path have been accidental. I want to say accidental, or it's been thrown in from people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. With running, in particular, I got thrown into running because of a friend that I haven't met yet. It's crazy. Now I'm going to date it back. I've virtually met him through MySpace. His name is Rob. He's really cool. He's down to earth. This was done when I was doing all of these open mic poetry. So basically, people would write down their poems, scribble it down on napkins, or maybe it was well thought over weeks, or maybe just a couple of minutes. And you would go to these venues where it might be a cafe, it could be a laundromat. It's just a matter of who's willing to come and share their work. I was doing all of this through MySpace at the time. I was like, I'm not going to do any type of open mics. And then eventually one of my friends kind of tricked me into doing open mics. Next thing I knew, I was addicted to it. And I was sharing parts of my work and my journey through MySpace. He was one of the people who followed my blog, in particular. And like at the time, I think you could subscribe to it and, you can put comments and, give people feedback. That's if the person allowed it. And I was completely open with that. We ended up following each other's journeys, essentially after MySpace kind of dwindled off and died. Essentially, we ended up following each other through Facebook. And along the way, he had signed up for a half marathon, which he has not done.
And look at you.
Like, God damn you, Rob. So, yeah, so he signed up for this half marathon, and it was just like, okay, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it. And this was just supposed to be a one-time deal. I was just like, all right, I'm going to do this once. I never ran a day in my life. Like, the joke I tell everybody is that I didn't run for anything other than the ice cream man. So for me to go from not running at all to, I was just, the only thing that I was a fanatic about was boxing. If it wasn't boxing, I wasn't really into it. And I only looked at fitness as a way to look at losing weight, not so much as something that I would do it to enjoy it. I was probably, I want to say I was in my fitness journey 2013, May 28, 2013 is pretty much when I got into my fitness journey. And I was like, you know what? I need to lose this weight. I'm going through back issues. So was that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that May 2013, was that when your friend Rob said he was going to do the marathon, or was that before or after? No, it was right after it. Because I had lost a lot of weight. May 28, 2013 was basically the date that I stopped laughing at myself in the mirror. I used to cope with the weight gain by making jokes before everyone else did. And that's a lot of people. A lot of people are like, okay, let me just be the fat, funny person, so I won't look like the fat, aggressive person in the room, or the person that's going to be super defensive or have others make jokes of them. And then next thing you know, you're crying. So I figured, if I make jokes about myself, then there's nothing else that anybody can actually say about me. And it worked for the most part. Even though there were a couple of instances where people did catch me off guard, I never wanted people to see me in that element where I felt like, they got me again. So May 28th, 2013, I looked in the mirror. I couldn't turn my neck, but so far it wasn't funny anymore. I was like, okay, you know what? I need to make this change. I started looking at Instagram, like most people now. They use their social media and they find they create this vision board. I have one still in my office. And I was like, this is what I want to look like. Had no idea about fitness. I kind of threw myself in there. Like, I was doing calisthenic workouts, and, I had these DVDs that were collecting dust, and I lost a lot of weight.
How much did you weigh at that time?
Oh gosh, I stopped counting after 265 pounds. Oh. And I'm 5'3.5". So that's just a lot. Thankfully I can say that I didn't have like all the excess loose skin, which sometimes do mess with people's self-esteem. But just having that amount of weight on me at that time and walking around, it just made the simplest of tasks complicated. I live in a brownstone. Walking up a couple of flights of steps, it gets you winded really quick. Just for anyone to do that on a regular basis, I couldn't play with my son, because I'm tired. I didn't want to stay outside for too long. I'm fatigued after work. I didn't have energy unless it was something that motivated me. I got into this fitness journey within about 3 months. I lost like 45 pounds, like in months. It just started like dropping off of me. And it was just literally just changing my diet, working out on a regular basis. But I was working out on like this extreme way. It was just like completely, like, now I look back and I'm like, what the hell was I training for? I was working out like 2 hours a day.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah. And at the time I didn't realize how much, the food in, food out thing actually matters. I was down to like 1,200, 1,400 calories a day. Eventually that type of stuff actually catch up with you. It starts to eat at your bones and your muscles and stuff. And running really changed my relationship, not only with my weight, but the way that I ate, the way that I looked at my body, the way that I talked to myself. And I signed up for my first race impulsively on, I want to say, sometime in October, November. And the race was a half marathon. And I was like, all right, in 2014, I will be doing a half marathon just for giggles. Just for giggles' sake, I'm like, all right, I've done it.
Check it off the list.
Check it off the list. And I'll move on from there. And then I'll find something else crazy to do. And this turned out to be, I want to say it was a blessing.
Did you get hooked on the way to that half marathon, or during or after that marathon?
During. In the beginning, I had no idea of how to breathe. Like, I didn't realize breathing is like everything. Like, so many people don't realize, like, if you actually learn how to breathe, and like I'm learning that again now through swimming, if you know how to breathe and you run through your core, it can keep you going for miles. I used to think runners were crazy. I was like, there's no way that I would run around in circles for stale bagels and a medal that I can buy, like this doesn't make any sense. But along the way, I went to the track, and it was like different instances that made me fall in love with running. This one instance was this guy. He was at Boys and Girls High School track. He would run around in circles, and I know a lot of people would, like, within this neighborhood know who I'm talking about, where this guy would run around, he would jog backwards. He had on headphones, had incredible legs. Like, this guy, like, he had to be like in his 50s, and he would just jog backwards, and he was just really, really speedy. And then all of a sudden he'll have like these dance breaks. Like, it didn't feel like it was a sport. It felt like
he was having fun.
Yeah, because before that, I was just like, running seems like, all I pictured were these people just like sweating and out of breath and, oh my God, I'm waiting for it to be over.
Right. And you point to the people who, I sometimes think of this when I'm running, because I would notice people, or people would point it out to me. You never see a runner who smiles.
Right.
And so when I run, I either listen to podcasts or I listen to some great music. Sometimes I find myself like at a stoplight, just like doing a little dance or something, trying to have fun with it, because that's important.
It is. This is funny you say that. I find myself doing that a lot during my races. People are like, you're a mile 28 and you're still smiling. And I'm like, I have no idea why I was smiling. It's like,
because you're almost done.
Yeah, you're almost done. It's like, okay, it's almost done. I've told myself narratives in my head, like, especially for the longer races. For marathons, I usually tell myself this lie, and I'll think of a training run. And I'm like, okay, well, my average training runs are about 5 miles. So if I went downtown Brooklyn and I forgot my keys, now I got to turn back around and go back before my husband goes to work. Now I went back out, and that's about 7.5 miles in, because I did this trip there and back. Oh crap, I forgot my wallet. So now I got to turn back around. These are the lies that I tell myself to get myself through it on the rough moments.
Yeah.
Because my entire first year, I used to cry by mile 9. And the way I looked at my running the first year, when I actually started falling in love with it, and it was really thanks to this group called Black Girls Run. They saw me inside of I want to say like a neighborhood track at the time, and they saw me running, and they're like, hey, how you doing? Like, you're out here like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. We have meetups. And it really helped with my relationship with women, because I had a series, it's terrible to admit, but I'm very sure I'm not alone in this, where we're conditioned to have this mistrust of women, where you would find yourself like, you already are skeptical of men, but you have this mistrust of women. Like, women are great, they're safe to be around, but you can't trust them with secrets, you can't trust them with certain things. But Black Girls Run helped break that barrier for me, because I started getting like a sisterhood through them.
Yeah, you had a community.
Yeah, so now with this new community, I'm like, now I'm inspired to sign up for runs. And they're like, oh, when are you going to do your next one? And I'm like, I didn't think about it.
You better come up with something, because you're inspiring them now.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, wow, your speed is picking up. And I've found myself shifting gears of what pushed me out there to run. Like, I see hashtags all the time. I think like it was called Why I Run. I am like a goldfish, because literally I can tell you one thing today where I'm like, okay, this is what got me running. And it literally will change in the next 30 days of what keeps me running. And I find myself evolving through the running community, where my first year, I used running as my form of grieving. I thought about my dad heavily when I ran, and it was always before the 9th mile, I just start breaking down crying.
Is your dad living? Or when you say grieving, literally over his death?
Yeah, grieving over his death.
Okay.
Like, he's been gone for almost 10 years. He passed the day before Obama went into office, actually, January 19th. He passed away, and I want to say that I looked at him as if he was 9 lives. Like, he had 9 lives. I was like, okay, there's no way that you could take this man out. He's gone through everything. Like, he had all these, he's the person, the family member that has all the crazy stories where they keep you engaged. And it's like, it's funny, but you're scared to laugh, because like, there's so many things of this I should not be laughing at. That was my dad. He was the life of the party, but these stories were very real. And he had marks to prove it, and gunshot wounds to prove it, and knife marks to prove it, and records to prove it. And it's like, oh, this is not funny. This is really somebody's real life. And he essentially became the best role model that I couldn't have asked for, because there are aspects of his life that I would never, ever, ever want to follow. But there are so many gems that he provided others as well as myself, along the way. That
kind of gems.
When it came down to speaking my piece, and speaking my own truth, he had a very, he has a very abrasive way of telling people to be honest. It is very terrible to say that your dad actually bragged about being a crackhead. But the way that he would say it is almost like the way that people would do it in stand-up. I think of Kevin Hart, when Kevin Hart talks about his dad, I would say I think it was his dad that he's talked about. And his dad would come into the school and his dad is embarrassing, but he's honest about it. And he's like, listen, my dad one day I was probably like 7 or 8. And he said this out loud. And I lived in these housing developments, and he's like, somebody was like, oh, you're just nothing but a fat crackhead. And he's like, if I'm going to be a crackhead, I'm going to be the best one at it.
Yeah, but aren't you doing the same thing with your weight?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you learned to do, is to get ahead of anybody giving any judgment against you about it. He was doing the same thing.
And he was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I realized how much the more that I ran away from trying to not be like him, I realized that I was him. In a sense, just in female form, where I was just like, all right, if I make these jokes before anybody else make these jokes, then nobody can hurt me. And with running, it changed my whole relationship with how I looked at my weight, how I looked at my body image, how I spoke to myself, how to not name call myself. Because if you say certain things over a certain amount of time, you start to manifest these things.
So when you say with running, you learned how to look at that stuff differently, how?
I want to say I fell in love with myself all over
again. So you were more accepting
right.
of yourself. So you weren't running and saying, oh my gosh, I'm so heavy. I'm having so much more difficult time than somebody else. You're saying, I can run, and you're actually using the F word. You're saying fat.
Yeah, I'm like part of my blog is called Running Fat Chef, and then people are like, oh my God, like they're whispering. And I'm like even when I tell people my email address, they're like, oh, I'm glad you said that and not me. And I'm like, why is it such why is it like the other F word?
Well, you know what? It's because if I said it about you, it could sound derogatory. Right. But if you say it about yourself, then you're giving permission to somebody else to say it.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not oblivious, when it comes down to saying the word fat. It is offensive to so many people because that's how people take it. But I'm like, I have fat on my body. I know that I am not what I would say the fashion industry standards of, a smaller frame person. I am a fuller frame woman, but I am healthy despite what, I have a couple of naysayers, well, more than a couple. I have a lot of
one or two.
Yeah, like one or two, they sprinkle out of what works, contaminate my inbox. But that I have people out there that's like, oh, you're going to hurt your knees and obesity epidemic, and you're promoting this agenda. And it is so tiresome because even when you provide them with facts of, hey, actually, I'm doing something with my life, and that there are other things, like you cannot just look at someone and assume that they're unhealthy because of their weight or how they're holding this stuff. I know plenty of people who are 90 or 100 pounds who will probably tell you something like, hey, I am going through X, Y, and Z illness. Or you have to think twice about how you congratulate somebody on their weight loss, in a sense. You tell somebody, oh my God, you look so much better that you lost weight. And then the person turns around and says, hey, I only tried to starve myself about 5 times. Now you have this long pause. It's an awkward pause. It's like, okay, I didn't expect that to be the answer. You're expecting them to say, oh yeah, I did this, that, and the third, and I feel so much better in my life. And I am literally living proof. I am one of those people who was told, like, oh my God, you lost so much weight. And then I saw the backlash. I not only felt the backlash, but I heard the backlash of losing the weight. Running taught me that I had to learn how to listen to myself and listen to my body. What makes Latoya happy? Not so much what makes everybody else happy, what makes society happy, what makes me happy. When I lost like 100 pounds, I was 10 pounds away from goal weight, and I absolutely hated it.
What part of it did you hate?
Oh gosh, for me, I suffer from body dysmorphia. Basically, for anyone that's listening, body dysmorphia is basically being able to look at a reflection in the mirror and it's just like, this doesn't match.
You're never happy.
You're never happy. You're not even looking for the happy things like, oh, okay, I improved here. No, it's more like, I can lose more weight, or I still look fat. I was holding on to size 20 pants when I was a size 10. because I was just in so much denial. It took for a group of my friends to say, hey, listen, you need to go out there and buy new clothes because all of these things are falling off of you.
You were literally still wearing the size 20.
I was still wearing these size 20s. And I'm like, I'll put a belt on it. And they're like, no, you look terrible. Like you need those friends sometimes to kind of like be your reality check. But what didn't help was I had people who started off on my journey when I started losing the weight. They're like, oh, you're doing such a great job, to you're losing too much weight. Are you on drugs? Are you starving yourself? I don't think that's healthy. You looked so much better when you had the weight on you. And then it forced me to look at myself and say, am I actually happy at 160 pounds? I didn't like the way my face looked. Like, realistically, I did not like the way that I was losing the weight. It did not help that when I was losing the weight, now I was at this point, I was doing my running journey. I was probably about 3 or 4 months into my running, and I started losing even more weight because I wasn't eating enough. These were the things that if I would have asked my group, hey, what's the proper way that you eat or whatever, I was just like, oh my God, I feel so hungry. But my calculator is telling me that I'm supposed to stay at 1,400 calories if I want to lose this weight. You can't do that as a runner, especially not as an endurance runner. As an endurance runner, if your appetite is kicking up, it is probably for a reason. You need to be able to put those calories back in. I just did not have this healthy relationship with my body. Everything that was fitness wise was looked at as this is a means to lose weight, to make others happy, not me. When that entire mindset changed into I truly love running because of fill in the blank. And those fill in the blanks for me was more like, I can't believe I can actually do this. At one point, I was told that I was going to lose my mobility. I didn't think that I can actually run this far. I realized that the people that I looked at as role models in my community, and pardon me for saying this, but I really, as 80s kid, a black 80s kid, it was just like, the only black people that we saw do this was the Africans. Like, it's not something that you would see African Americans in our neighborhood doing this. You don't see them running. It was not, sports was accessible, like when it came down to like handball courts or basketball. I did not see runners.
Are you seeing a lot of runners in this neighborhood? And I'll just say for listeners that we are in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. Are there a lot of runners around here?
Oh yeah, now yeah, it's definitely like. But when I was growing up, like before, I want to say like even 10 years ago. Oh no, absolutely not. The joke that a lot of comics would use is that when they were growing up, your parents tell you to go in at a certain hour, like when the lights go out, when the street lights come on, that means you go inside. That was really the mentality that I grew up as an 80s kid. Like I was born in 85 and living in the projects. Oh no, you're not going to stay out at a certain hour. There might be gunshots, there might be gangs, there might be violence, somebody stabbing somebody, or you might see somebody doing drugs. There's just so many things that we desensitize ourselves to thinking that it's normal and it's really not, that it kind of stripped me of some of the things that I hear some of my white counterparts actually talk about. Oh my God, I played lacrosse or soccer. And these were the things that people like me used to look at and say, yeah, black people don't do that. People of color, we don't do that. There's a couple of us like, we'll do it for school or if it was a gym requirement, but to actually just do it, no. And I'm not saying that all people of color had this mindset. I'm just saying that people that was within my neighborhood, a lot of us did. If we didn't have someone that was pulling us outside of the community to say, hey, listen, these things are available to you, that you are much more than just your environment, then you were led to believe that these things were not possible. I still have friends that think I'm completely crazy for not only being a runner, but how dare you become an ultra runner? Like, what are you running for? Like,
running from.
Running from, exactly. Like, because the reality of it is like the joke that, and it's a terrible joke because I find myself doing these terrible jokes like my dad. I'm like, the only thing that I run from, I hear from people, I'm only running from the police or I'm running from gunshots. And I'm just like, you realize like the tinge of hurt that comes along with those jokes. Sometimes jokes aren't jokes. There's this tinge of truth, especially now where a lot of race relations and tensions are up in the air. And there's so many things like on a political level that people are just like, they're startled. They're like, oh yeah, that's where I'll get the feedback of, oh girl, I can't do that. Or it comes down to weight. I'm too fat. I'm too old. I'm too disabled. And I fit into so many of those stereotypes that I defy. I'm a 33-year-old African-American woman. I'm plus size. I am not running to lose weight anymore. I do have several disabilities, and I don't use those as a crutch. If anything, I believe that you can wake up at 65 and actually go out there and run.
Absolutely.
And don't feel any type of shame. We all start from somewhere.
I have these conversations, this kind of conversation, not always about running, but about other things too, where I have people tell me, not daily, but probably weekly, about my running. And they'll tell me, it's not good for your knees. You said this before.
Yes,
so
yeah.
It's not good for your knees. Isn't it hard on your body? You shouldn't be doing those sorts of things. Because I mentioned to you before that I ran the Seattle Quadzilla, which was 4 marathons in 4 days. Right. And so I get these people who are constantly telling me about how bad it is for you.
Right.
And it's also about travel, because I've done some crazy things with my travel world as well.
Right.
I rode a motorcycle from Seattle to Panama.
Oh, what?
Yeah, solo. And it's that kind of thing where I get people saying, you can't do that as a woman. You can't do that as a white woman going through
in certain
Mexico.
areas.
So I understand that. And I try to deconstruct, why do people do that? Because they can't do it. And I think that there are some people who are genuinely concerned.
Yeah.
Are you, Latoya, going to get injured or bothered out there or attacked or whatever it is in your neighborhood? Or are you going to hurt yourself? So I think people are concerned about that. But I think people don't understand. And it's out of an ignorance of not knowing.
Right.
That they just don't know. And then they don't understand the effects of their words on you too.
The fear of the unknown. And the thing is, people are notorious for projecting their own fears onto other people. I've had people that looked at me crazy. They're like, you're really going to do a marathon this week, and then the next week you're going to go out there and do a half marathon. You're going to injure yourself. And I'm like, no, this is not something that just came about and I just woke up tomorrow and just said, hey, I feel like doing a marathon with absolutely no training. No, like this is stuff that has to build up over time. So yes, it sounds extreme to the average person who may not know about how this works, but to someone in the runners community, we completely get it. We get each other's crazy per se, that, okay, this is definitely possible. For me right now, I'm literally working myself up to doing the Javelina 100. And that's like October 27th to the 28th. And I'm choosing to do the 100K route. To be very honest, when I read about this, like, my friend is Myrna Valerio, and she's Fat Girl Running. She's all over right now. Who knows what state she's in right now? And I love her dearly. But when I read her book and I was reviewing her book, I was like, you're absolutely nuts. And I said this as a runner. I was like, you're absolutely nuts.
Because she's doing the ultras and the trail runs and everything too.
I was like, you're absolutely nuts. This is not, I was like, why would you do that? Why would you sign up for this? And I realized after I said it and after I read her book, I was like, I'm speaking from a place of fear. It was my own fear that, well, thankfully, she already did it, but thankfully I didn't say this to someone else, because now I'm projecting my fear onto other people because I don't see it possible for myself. And now what words that I think is only for me actually serves for other people if they believe it as well, especially people who might be following me. If I don't choose my words wisely, if I'm not just containing this down to my journal or my inside thoughts, these are things that can be projected. We love to say convenient things like, I'm only saying this out of concern or fear or worry, but you have to question, is it self-serving to you, or is it actually serving towards someone else? Have you personally done the research before you actually put those words out there? And those are the things that I've learned over the years to kind of block out and say, this wasn't for them. This is completely for me. Anytime I sign up for these races, as much as I love now that I don't know how many people following my journey, I have to remind myself to think back of why I'm doing this. It cannot be, I'm doing this only for my son. I cannot be, I'm doing this for the 10,000 followers that I have on Instagram. It has to be something that serves for me. And it sounds selfish to some people, but it's not about being selfish. It's about being, it's about this having a purpose that makes sense for you. And the moment that I lose this sense of understanding why I do this, it's not going to be fun anymore. It's not going to be my journey anymore. I'll be living for everybody else. And that's like going back to being 265 plus pounds, sitting here making jokes because I don't want anybody else to beat me to the punch.
In a sentence or a paragraph, why are you doing it? What is your purpose and your why for it?
So it's evolved so much over the years. Why I'm doing it now. Now it has evolved to not only doing it for myself, but as a representative for my community. I am doing this for every disabled person out there, for every fat person who's told themselves they can't, for people who have been shut down, the thousands of emails I've got from people who didn't feel like they were inspired to do anything, the nasty messages that they get from family members, from friends who constantly tell them that they can't. And I want to serve as that person to say that you can, that you will, that there is a possibility, and somebody gives you that option. You have to be courageous enough to run with it, and
Literally.
at least literally run with it and take it. And this doesn't have to correlate to just running. Maybe you're a prolific swimmer. You don't even know. I mean, someone like me, I don't know how to swim, and I literally signed up for my first triathlon next month.
Oh, no kidding. That's great.
So I encourage people to be a fear chaser. If it scares you enough, sometimes you need to entertain it. Unless it's something like really extreme, like drugs, don't chase that. But but if it's something that excites you, invigorates you, is haunting you in your dreams because you want to touch it, but it scares you so much, take the first step. So now it's to a point where I'm not just doing this just for me. I'm doing this for a community, and it could be for various communities. It's not just for people of color. It's not just for fat people. It's not just for disabled people. It is equal opportunity at this point for anybody that needs that boost. That yes, I am human. I have day-to-day issues. I am barely covering rent, but this is basically what's getting me through. I'm doing it for almost like all of us at this point. And even if I want to say essentially, I want to say the word fail in like these fake air quotes. Even if I fail trying, there's no failure in that because I attempted. The only way that I can fail is not trying and living in that failure of the thoughts of failure of, if I try this and I fall 3 times in front of people and people laugh, am I courageous enough to actually get up that 4th time and actually try again?
There's a bunch of things that I just want to share that this brings up for me. One, we were talking before about kind of how people judge and, or whatever their concern is. I had a friend send me an article once, and she said, look, people who do ultras or people who do marathons are more likely to die of a heart attack or something. I'm sure, have you seen that,
Yeah.
that there's that information?
Oh gosh.
And I said, guess what? So are people who sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch TV.
Right.
They die of heart attacks too. Nobody's sending around those articles.
I'm just like, where are these statistics coming from? I'm like, do you understand that these statistics means that they have been analyzing a certain group, and the group might be statewide, it might be citywide, it might be a demographic of 35 to 44. You have to question all of these things. I remember when I impulsively signed up, this is what I did do on impulse. I signed up to jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
That I won't do.
Yes, that is the scariest damn thing I've ever done in my life. And I did it because I was like, I'm finally under 200 pounds. And I wanted to give this as a birthday gift to myself, but I was scared of traveling. I was scared of flying, and I was scared of heights. And I'm like, whoo, that's a triple. I was like, why not get in a really good airplane just so I can jump out of it and see the city? Oh, it's nerve-wracking. I thought that was the one time that I probably would have pooped my pants. I've read all these horror stories, and I remember somebody writing me, and I'll leave her nameless, but she sends me an article. Like, it's the worst thing you can ever do to someone. She sends me an article, and she says, look, people can die in this. So then the instructor, I'm telling him all my fears. I'm like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm freaking out. I'm on this 3.5 hour train ride from Brooklyn all the way to like somewhere in the Hamptons to do this. It was with Long Island skydiving. And I'm telling the instructor, I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And he's like, what brought you out here? So I'm telling him all these reasons. And he's like, what made the change happen now? And he's like, oh, somebody else's fears. He's like, well, here's a statistic for you. He's like, you have a higher chance of dying at Black Friday at a Walmart than you do actually jumping out of this plane. So I was like, you know what? Okay. I was like, that's a crazy statistic. I was like, it made me laugh. I'm going to go for it. And I did it. And I would not take back that experience for the world. Like, check back on me in 6 months.
When did you do it?
Oh, this was 2014. 2014. This was like the year I actually started running, because like 2013 is when I started losing the weight, and 2014 is when I was just like, I want to do all the things, all of the crazy things that everybody told me I shouldn't. Like, it was like I went through phases where it was like, at first I was doing it for my weight, then I was doing it to be defiant, then I was doing it for me. And I love the stage where I started doing this completely for me. It wasn't, people were accusing me of being selfish, and are you thinking about your kid, and what about your husband? What about your friends that you're cutting off? Because people don't think about it. When it comes down to the training, it's not about race day. It is about the months and the hours and the days and tears that you have to put in.
That is so well said. People don't realize, people do realize the amount of time that goes into it, but it really is about that consistent, whether it's 16 weeks, which is the typical marathon training, but whether it's about those 16 weeks, it's not necessarily about those 4, 5, 6, 7 hours of the actual marathon day. It's a lot of time in advance.
It's a lot of time that you have to put in. Those are the times where I give myself permission to fail. Though the training runs are my failure runs. Those are the times where I can learn from every mistake that was made. I can learn what it feels like to run through fatigue. When I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, why am I doing this? Who do I have to prove this to?
I don't want to run.
Yeah, you have to question why those thoughts come into mind. And that's what I do every morning. Anytime I have like these negative thoughts where I'm just like, okay, it's been week 7. It's not fun anymore. It's raining outside. My bed feels great. I'd rather be laying here with my family, and I'm up at 4:00 in the morning, drinking coffee, waiting for the poop to actually pass, because this is a ritual, and why am I doing this? And those are the times where, instead of looking at it from a negative standpoint, you have to say, why am I doing this? And you remind yourself during the hardest moments why you're doing it. So when it comes down to race day, it's like butter. It's just completely smooth. It may not be, and the thing is, even on race day, like, you can train for months on these things. And on race day, every worst case scenario will happen. That still is a lesson, because you're going to persevere, whether it means that you made it all the way to the finish line, or maybe something happened along the way. It's still, your life is a marathon. Your entire life is a marathon. There are going to be hiccups and terrible things that will happen along the way. But if you can still get back up and say, I'll still do it again.
Right. And that's the importance of the training too, is that if you're new to running, or really if you're new to anything and you miss a day of it, you can look at it as, especially when you're new to it, you think like, oh shit, I just missed a day. This is disastrous. Even if people who are on a diet, you think it's disastrous. But if you get up the next day and then you go back to it, that's a huge win. That's a bigger win than being consistent. Because if you can get over a little hump or a little downtime or a slip up, eating ice cream or whatever, whatever it is.
I have a root beer sitting in front of me. Because this is real life. Like, real life, doesn't mean that I have to count carbs every day, or, oh my God, since I'm running, that means I can eat everything. No, that is not real life. Real life is about your balance. And the thing is, your balance is going to change. There are going to be days where you got it exactly right. And there's going to be days where you're going to be struggling severely. Question the days that is a struggle and ask yourself, what got me through it all the other days? And that's going to be okay. And then, like, I have a lot of people that's like, oh my God, I haven't ran the entire week. I just haven't motivated myself. That's okay.
Get up tomorrow and run.
Yes. I'm like, there's always tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. And I literally show that through my feed. I don't believe in just showing them the good stuff. I show them, I'm like, hey guys, it's Thursday and I really don't feel like doing this. I'm going to put on my clothes. And this is how I trick myself on the harder days. At the very least, even if I have it in my mind, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to put on the clothes. I'm going to dress the part. I'm going to dress the part. I'm going to make the attempt to walk outside. I'm going to breathe in the air. I might walk into the gym. And you know what? As soon as I made it to the gym, I'm like, you know what? It's not happening today. I made an effort. I made an effort to try. And I always have tomorrow to try it all over again. I had 3 of those days this week. Literally, today is my first day actually going back out there after 3 days of going through depression, of not feeling like I was able to pull this through. Like, literally a couple of hours ago, I was just telling my audience, like, hey, so I might actually back out of this triathlon, because I couldn't streamline. And it literally took for my instructor to look at me, and she's like, you're going to do what? And she's like, let's see how you feel at the end of the lesson. At the end of the lesson, she got me to glide off on my own.
This is your swim lesson.
This is my swim lesson. And she's like, do you feel like backing out anymore? And I was like, no. And she's like, you're one of my most scariest students. But if I can make you a swimmer, I can make anybody a swimmer. Because I wouldn't even go into the pool.
By scariest, the one that didn't want to go in the pool.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I freaked out and I melt down and I cried in front of the entire class for 4 sessions straight. And this is something that I've literally journaled about, because it's a real fear for a lot of people. Oh my God, what if I drown? And I mean, and it may sound crazy to some people, but I really thought I was going to drown in 3 feet. I was just like, and she's like, well, whenever you feel panic, just stand up. And as logical as it sounds, you tell that to someone who is trapped inside of their brain that they're going to drown and they cannot hear anything else but I'm going to drown, then guess what? You will drown, whether it's in your own tears or in the actual literal pool. Yeah. And it took for her to she scaled it back just for like 15 minutes. I love that she did this. And I think she's like my second mom. She's like, all right. She's like, all right, guys, you all kind of progressed. I'm going to take a couple minutes with her. And she's like, all right, I want you to put your foot into the pool. She's like, I want you to sit on the edge. You know that your body is planted here. Your feet is the only thing that's touching this pool. And she, in a matter of minutes.
That wasn't today, was it?
No. This is months. Yeah, this is like months ago. And she's like, all right, I want you to put your feet in the pool. And I'm like, all right, cool. And I mean, this is literally something I've done since January. So I encourage people to not get discouraged when it comes down to anything that they actually want to try in life. I mean, my triathlon is literally in 5 weeks.
You're already biking?
Yeah. The cycling was like, that was like something that was easy because it's land. I was like, all right, it's cool. I was like, I know when I fall, the ground is there. When I fall in water, there's nobody to get me. I was like, they're not going to come fast enough. I don't care how much of a professional they are. If I stop swimming, what if nobody sees me?
Which triathlon are you doing?
Oh, New Jersey State Triathlon.
Is it open water or is it in a pool?
It is open water. So that's what really scares me is the idea that it's open water. There's nothing but people around me who are proficient swimmers, who people are going to swim.
How do you know that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, here I am. I'm giving all these people like this ego boost, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be somebody out there that's just as scared as I am.
I bet.
And that's what I keep in mind. And I'm like, all right, as a runner, I'm a back of the pack runner, which essentially means that, hey, I'm not one of these runners that run a 7-minute, 8-minute mile. I'm more like 13, on a bad day, 14. And if it's a marathon, it's going to be 15 minutes and it's going to be a slow ride. I might reduce it down to a walk, but I'm going to keep moving. And that's what I'm telling myself with this swim.
Just keep moving.
Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. And that's really the motto to life. Just keep swimming.
It is. That is a good motto. One of the other things that you said before was, and I used it with my business mainly, the reason why I started my business in travel was that I told myself for years that you can't make money in travel. And then I was in such a desperate low point in a job that I have. I thought I cannot go to work at this job any longer. So how can I make money in travel? And so that's what changed it for me. And I did the same thing with running, is that I used to run in my neighborhood and I would and this was when I was, so I told myself all my life, you're not a runner, you can't run. And then probably when I was, 46, 47, somewhere in there, I started running and I could run maybe 3 miles in my neighborhood. And I didn't like it. I was bored and I just thought, oh my gosh, how can people even do this? I couldn't, I was happy if I did 5 or 8 miles. And so I told myself I wasn't a runner. And then I was on this big trip. I was on a big trek in Bhutan. I was doing 25 days at like 18,000 feet in Bhutan trekking. Yep. Sleeping in a tent. And on that trek, I said, could I do this again? Or could I do this trek again? And I thought, well, what is it that I've always told myself I couldn't do? I always told myself I couldn't run a marathon. I'm going to go run a marathon.
Right.
When I get back, I'm going to run a marathon. So when I finished that, I came back to Seattle and then I just got myself all geared up and I treated myself to some fun running shorts and a top. And I got my little iPod shuffle all loaded up with music. And I just thought, I'm going to make this a fun thing. And then I started running more. And now my friends who who they used to, they would run 6 miles and I'd be like, oh, how could you run 6 miles?
Right.
Oh my God. Now 6 miles is like, I'm bored with that. It's like 8 miles is a run for me. 20 miles on the weekend.
It's an adrenaline rush.
It is.
And the thing is, like, you have to treat that almost like the stages of grieving. Well, when I'm on my really long runs, like, the thing is, you have to embrace the suck. I believe it was Dean Carnassius that actually said to embrace the suck, where you are going to go through those stages of grieving during your run, where the first 2 or 3 miles, you're going through the honeymoon stage. It's like, oh my God, this feels great. I got this. And then all of a sudden, like, it might be mile 4, it might be mile 20, where it's just like, oh my God, I want this to be over. The weather is shifting, it's raining, it is pouring rain, it is hot, it is snowing, it is hailing. Why am I out here? And next thing you know, when you stop overthinking it out of nowhere, it just feels incredible. Like this weird runner's high. And I used to think it was like imaginary. I'm like, okay, these people are like taking somebody's like drugs, to encounter these moments. No, it's very real. Like, it is very strange of how those endorphins just kind of like waking you up. And it's like, I feel lighter on my feet.
I get somewhere around mile 6 to 8. That happens to me. And I just think, life is so grand. Like, I'm in love with everything and I'm so happy and I want to cry because everything is just so beautiful. I don't know. For me, I don't know that it's a actual runner's high, but I do get this feeling of like, oh my God, I'm so grateful to be out here. This is such a gift. This is so great. But then you get to mile 12 or 15 and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Like, okay, like I need this shit to be over. Yeah. Like, but things like I find different things, like some races, they'll actually tell you not. One of the hardest things was running without headphones. Holy crap. That was like a rude awakening where I was just like, all right, I was relying on the music and then the music dies. What do you do to motivate yourself? And I have an internal soundtrack in my head. Oh gosh, I have everything from I Got a Feeling to Marilyn Manson.
So literally you're singing
like literally
in your head.
I'm singing in my head. And then there are times where I just follow mantras, where it's just one foot in front of the other. I think of inspirational people. There are times where I can even get as boring as thinking about the laundry list that I'm trying to avoid. I'm like, oh, great. When I get home, I'm going to have to do these dishes. But right now I'm out here on this run, so I don't have to do it. That's a win.
Maybe when I go home, somebody will have done the dishes and I don't have to worry about it.
So it's like whatever gets you moving. But like the thing is, it doesn't have to match the next person on the course, and it doesn't have to be shared either. This is the moment where you can embrace that selfish moment of saying, this is serving me, not anyone else. This is serving me. And sometimes I feed off of other people that I see on the course. Now, my first marathon experience, it went ghost town on me after, especially as a back of the pack runner, and it sucks. With the first 13 miles, you see all these people out there and they're cheering you on, and they got the emoji signs, and it's like, hey, smile if you peed on yourself, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. And then all of a sudden the signs disappear, the people disappear, and you have to find ways to push through it.
What race was that? Where was it?
This was Rock and Roll DC. I signed up for this ridiculous, it was a really ridiculous time cutoff. It was 5.5 hours. I should have never, in hindsight.
Did you make the cutoff?
Yeah.
Oh, you did.
I made a cutoff. I really pushed myself. I was just like, okay. And I was crying the last 13 miles. And I get yelled at a lot for
the last 13 miles. That's half of the race.
Yeah, that's half of the race. Yeah. I cried. By mile 20, I was just like, I'm not prepared for this. And it didn't help that I was training the entire time drinking alcohol. My routine, and it's terrible, but I'm super transparent about it. I literally would wake up about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because I'm pretty much in the culinary industry. Our hours are horrible.
So you're working late. Okay.
So I would wake up 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, get showered. I would eat something really, really quick, and then I'd pick up my son. I would see my son for probably about 30, 45 minutes tops. And it was wearing on me. The idea that I was away from my son, I didn't feel like a real parent. I felt like I was making my husband like this single parent. And we was already having our own little personal gripes and issues with each other. I think everybody in their marriage, at some point, you kind of wake up next to that person. It's like, oh God, why are you still here? And it's not that you don't love them. It's just you just kind of hit that point in every relationship where it's just this person's sitting down on the sofa again. Oh my God, they're chewing too hard. They're just driving me nuts. And that was the point that we crossed, where it was just oh, we're just so tired of each other. Here I am, I'm dropping off my son with my mom-in-law. I'm going straight to work. I make the work by 4 o'clock. I would work originally it was supposed to be like a 4 to 11. It would turn into 4 to 12, 4 to 1. And at the end of this shift, we had this incentive where they offered us bar drinks. Now, this happens a lot in the restaurant industry. That one bar drink would turn into 7 for me. And it wasn't like, it was just something like cute little drink. Like it would be tequila neats, everything that was hard that I knew that was going to work really, really quick. And it was just to numb the pain of not being home.
How long did that go on for?
That went on for close to a year. It was just like, I felt like while everybody was giving me these congrats of losing all this weight, I hated my body. I hated the way it looked. I felt like I was too skinny. Like once I actually realized I lost all this weight and people were kind of like forcing me to give away all these clothes, I hated the way I looked. I hated the feedback I was getting. I had half of my audience telling me, you did great and you look, you're goals and you're something to be admired. While I have the other part of my, and I mean, these were family members and friends who were telling me, you look terrible. You need to gain the weight back. What are you doing with your life? I think that since you lost the weight, what they considered my confidence was arrogance and cockiness. Oh, don't you get tired of posting up selfies? And at the time I was doing yoga, which didn't help because then now I felt so comfortable with my body. I'm literally right now, I mean, you guys can't see it, but I'm wearing a crop top. These were things that I would have never done. So it was like every time I found myself right back in the hole of 265 pounds all over again, where every time I found this happy moment of embracing my body and embracing the things that made me happy, I had a group of naysayers telling me why I should feel uncomfortable doing the things that I was doing. You're a mom. You can't dress that way. You can't post up pictures like that. You can't showcase your body like that. You need to have some respect for yourself.
This was after you had lost the weight.
And I was just like, why am I getting...
Man, you
can't win.
No, you can't win. You cannot win.
This is the feedback I got at 265 pounds. And it took for that marathon literally woke me up. It was literally that marathon because I made not only did I sign up for my first marathon, the next day I made a mistake and signed up for the New York City half.
You made a mistake.
I made a mistake. Like I tell you, like everything is accidental with me. I made a mistake. I signed up for the marathon with rock and roll. So I had to run from DC while still in pain, going through my first experience with severe lactic acid. And I had to push myself literally like 18 hours later.
Oh, you mean you didn't sign up for it? You actually did it.
Yeah.
So it was basically back to back.
Yeah, it was back to back.
Oh, so you think I'm crazy with the Quadzilla? Oh, come on.
You see crazy called crazy. See, so here I am. I'm like, oh my God, I just did 39.3 miles in total in the course of a weekend and I still feel like crap. And I was just like, something has to change.
Do you feel like you're eating healthier now?
Yes. Oh gosh, it forces me. Like, I mean, in the culinary industry, we're so conditioned to eating as we go. We have to try everything that we serve. Like, okay, you just made this risotto. Make sure the risotto actually tastes good. And it gets to a point where some people eat so much of it, they're like, I don't want to touch anything in this restaurant. Or some of us are so worked out, we're like burnt out actually, that we don't have a chance to make our own meals when we get home. I found the joy of cooking all over again for myself by literally leaving the restaurants. It was burning me out. I wasn't seeing my family. I wasn't happy. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to have to get over this hump and this fear of being on my own and working for myself. Just woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I'm tired of working for everyone else.
What are you doing now for work?
Right now, I am in between freelance photography. I do freelance catering. And then there's like now because of going viral and stuff, like I have different companies. It's like, hey, can you promote our stuff and our brand? And I'm like, that's great. But and I probably could make way more money if I wasn't so selective, but I believe in representing anything that I actually believe in. If I can wear it, if I can use it, then I'm completely on board with accepting payments. But if not, if I don't believe in your product, you're not going to get me to do it. That's like asking me to drink somebody's diet tea. I hate it. I hate seeing these advertisements where I'm watching people who look like, I hate to say it, because I feel like this is kind of shaming as well. When you see Instagram models, that's what people like to call them. They call them Instagram models, and they're like, oh, here they are posing with this tea. Meanwhile, they had plastic surgery and all of these things. And there's nothing wrong with anybody ever doing that. It's just be honest with your audience of how you got there, and because the thing is, even if they try to shame you for it, they have to respect your honesty. So when I see companies like that offer me products. I'm like, hey, we'll offer you $2,000 just to pose with this tea that you're never going to drink. I'm like, you can stay out of my inbox because I'm not going to do it. It's not something that I represent. It's not something I want to be attached with. I want people to have a relationship with their kitchen, a healthy relationship with their kitchen. When the days that you are tired, there are things like meal prep, and it doesn't have to be this elaborate plan of I have to pay somebody $150 a week. This is something that you can utilize your kitchen as if it's an episode of Chopped. I only have 5 ingredients. How can I make this good? How can I utilize my leftovers? And I've literally built Instagram stories off of showing people from Monday through Friday of, hey, I started off with salmon and I have 4 veggies that I kind of roasted off. I cooked on my stovetop. And then I'll show them different ways throughout the week. I'm like, all right, this was a main course. Now my veggies are a main course today. And this is how I'm going to chop it up and turn it into this salad. Now today it's going to turn into a sandwich. It's going to turn into this. Instead of 1, you're saving money. 2, you know what went into your food. 3, it actually can taste tasty and you do not have to be a chef. Because that's the misconception. People are like, oh, well, yeah, I have to tell you that it's a tomato reduction. No, it's ketchup. It's it's ketchup. Some people don't want to be fixated on counting the carbs, on counting the protein, you want to be able to make this practical for real life people, whether you are single or you have a family of 10. How can I help my family not be bored off of this meal? And I found ways to have a healthier approach where now I just can't touch things like McDonald's. If I eat fast food for 2 days out of the week, I physically get sick. I can taste things differently. When you take sugar out of your diet drastically and you try to go back, holy crap, it smacks you in the face. I'm just thankful because even as a plus size woman, I feel lighter. And incorporating shrimp training into my routines, because sometimes people look at my Instagram page and they're like, I know you said you run, but there's nothing but fitness videos on here. So it completely throws them off, but it goes hand in hand.
It's hard to take photos of yourself running.
Yeah, okay. I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna do this selfie, and I'm like, do y'all really want to see a whole bunch of selfie shots all throughout my page? I'm like, I doubt it. I'm like, it's like rambling about yourself all day long. Like at some point, you're like, I've told the story 6 times. Give me something different.
I know that you've had some health issues, and last year you went through a pretty traumatic
Last year
event.
it was a roller coaster ride. Last year was when I had my first experience of like a baby going viral experience because of BuzzFeed. That was like the first thing that people started really following my page for.
That was after the New York Marathon. Is that right?
No, this was before. So it was January of last year, January 2017. I was featured on BuzzFeed with several plus size athletes, and they all came from different backgrounds. Some of us were runners, some of us were power lifters, pole dancers. Like Roz Mays was one of the people that was featured on there. She's incredible. And we all talked about being plus size athletes. Now, it came with a slew of hecklers. Oh my gosh. The thing is, and I didn't take the conventional route because most people usually tell us to, turn the other cheek, just smile it off. Yeah, I fought back and and the thing is, I didn't just fight back. I wrote some really nasty comments right back, to the point where I was just kind of hitting below the belt. And that's what really made my blog pick up. Because there was a small group of people that's like, you shouldn't have to, don't talk bad to these people. And I'm like, why not speak up for yourself? I'm like, at some point, this gets tiring especially to plus size people, where the first thing in an argument that people would throw at us is, you're a fat bitch. Can you give me something else? I'm like, aside from my looks, aside from the fact that I've been told by people that, yes, I'm fat, what else can you contribute to this conversation as an insult? And I just started going back and I started challenging them. And I was like, well, if your mom stopped feeding me, then maybe I wouldn't be this fat. And people were just cracking up along the way. And they're like, oh my God, I got to follow her. And they didn't realize this is literally part of my personality, that this was the way that I was. And at times I still can be, but it takes a lot now to really get a rise out of me. So I experienced that, and people were like, okay, let's check this girl out. I started getting inquiries from that. And then it turned into the next month I was featured in Self Magazine. I was going through these highs. I was waking up in the morning. I'm like, this person never interviewed me. And I've learned that, hey, magazines can feature you
Without you even knowing
without
it.
even knowing it. And I'm like, all of a sudden I'm getting tagged, or I'll see 200 new followers when I wake up in the morning. I'm like, what's going on here? I started picking up on the trends. I'm like, if I'm seeing new followers, that means I was featured somewhere else. Now I have to do the hunt of where did you find me, or the emails that come in. But along the way, it came with what was overwhelmed. Some of the things it was like an introduction to being overwhelmed by other people's journeys. Sometimes we take other people's stories and we don't know how to just be empathetic to the situation without putting ourselves in that situation and saying, oh my God, how can I help? Sometimes the most helpful thing that you can do is just listen, not be so quick to say, I feel like I can't fix this person. You're not there to fix them. Sometimes the way that you are fixing people essentially is by listening, being a listening ear, or being transparent with your own journey. These were things that I had to learn. So here I am going through this high the first half of the year. Around June, I started getting sick. I'm like, oh my gosh, the humidity. I was like, I'm in New York City. It's always humid here. And in the summer, it's nasty. You can feel in the air, unlike Colorado, which I was like, oh my gosh, I can take this dry heat forever.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I forgot, just a quick side, I forgot about humidity here because I'm used to Seattle where it's cool. And even though we have rain and mist and that kind of thing, we don't have humidity. I was dying yesterday. I was walking around and I had jeans on.
And it's like 70 degrees.
Cool in the morning. So yeah, so humidity.
It's nasty. Like, I'm like, oh my God, this is so gross. So I kept blaming it the entire summer. I was like, guys, I'm at workouts. I'm doing these now Instagram live and all those other features on Instagram is starting to update, and then Facebook live and all these different things on social media is starting to, catch up with the trends or whatever. Like they're kind of doing this Snapchat kind of deal. And I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. I'm like, my workouts are not as hardcore as you're used to because this humidity is getting to me, not realizing I was pregnant. And
that's why you were so hot and tired.
I was so hot and tired. And I was like, some days I just like, my mood was changing. I'm like, I was waking up and I was like feeling depressed some days. And then all of a sudden, like 15 minutes later, I'm happy again. My biggest red flag was when I couldn't eat Indian food. I can eat Indian food, but then I couldn't wash the dishes. And I was like, the smell is getting to me. It was the strangest of things. And I'm like, I can make it completely through. And I was like craving Indian food. And the moment I touch it, it was just like, I can only eat like 5 bites. I'm ready for this to be done. And then I started craving peanut butter and honey sandwiches with ranch dressing. And I was like, holy crap, am I pregnant? And I was like,
oh God.
And the problem is that this is before my diagnosis kicked in with endometriosis. I was just like, but I'm still getting my menstrual. So I can't be pregnant. So I'm taking these tests. They're negative.
No kidding.
Negative, completely negative. Like the first, and I was pregnant. And this is the problem this is what comes into like all the health issues. So here I am. It's April. No, excuse me. I'm completely off. It was August at this point. And it's like 90 degrees outside. And I'm in the middle of doing this Instagram video. And I'm like, hey guys, how you doing? In the middle of the video, here I go. I throw up. First time I puked the entire time. And I'm like, I have to be pregnant. I was like, there's something completely wrong. It was a 5K that morning. It was Saturday and it was in Brooklyn. It took me 53 minutes to finish a 5K. And for me, that's a slow time for considering the other paces. For a 5K, I can knock that out in 36 to 40 minutes tops. Like on a bad day, I scale it down to like a 14-minute, pace. But I'm like, it's taking me almost 18 minutes to finish off a mile. So I was like, you know what, let me go home. And, I was nervous at this point because I'm like, I can't be pregnant right now because I have a Chicago Marathon and I have the New York City Marathon and I have the 60K coming up. And, I was like, I have all these races that I already signed up for. And if I'm pregnant, that means that I'm at least 3 to 4 months. And that means I'm going to be running pregnant. And here my brain is just going all different types of crazy. And Monday, sure enough, it shows I'm pregnant. Like, it didn't even wait 30 seconds. It's like, you're pregnant. And I was like, no, I'm in denial. Oh, next one's pregnant. Next one's pregnant. Next one's pregnant. I'm like, you can't be serious. I'm pregnant. So I had mixed feelings about it. I remember telling my friend, like, hey, I'm pregnant. Not even a couple of days later, I started getting sharp pains. It felt like extreme gas pains, and it just kept stabbing me on both sides. And it was so unbearable that I couldn't even sleep. This Monday morning, it was Sunday going into Monday. We ended up calling the ambulance. We ended up going to the hospital. And for some reason, they didn't let my husband in the room. I end up going in the room by myself. They did the sound, they're using the sonogram, and I can hear the heartbeat. And I'm like, holy crap, I really am pregnant. So now it's real. But the technician is like, congratulations. And then she pauses in between it. It goes from one technician to a staff of 3, to a staff of 5, to a staff of 7. And I'm like, okay, there's too many people in the room. What's going on? This room is only but so big. I was like, I've worked in the Department of Corrections Medical. Anytime that we see too many people in a room, that means something is severely wrong. Room cleared out. One person's left. And one of the gentlemen, he tells me, I'm sorry, but you had a vanishing twin. I've never heard of this day in my life. It basically means that I was carrying twins, but one of them died and the other one is still living. And I just was like, am I supposed to grieve right now? And like, you're confused.
Yeah, because you didn't, 48 hours or just a very, very short time before that, you didn't even realize you were pregnant.
Yeah. I'm just like, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to take this right now. Like, I hear a heartbeat. So there's a heartbeat on the monitor. That means one of them is living. So I should be happy. And I will never forget it. It was 136 beats per minute. It's certain things that you don't forget about those moments. And I was not sure of how I was supposed to process the entire thing. I'm like, I didn't know I was pregnant. I don't even know if I want to actually go on with the pregnancy. My doctor told me months before, please don't get pregnant right now because you have all these fibroids. That was the only diagnosis I had. They told me I had over 21 fibroids in me. And we were just talking about months before, we were talking about different procedures that I can do. And he asked me if I wanted to have more kids. And I told him bluntly, I don't know. I was like, I've had so many miscarriages. I stopped counting after 4. Came out of ER 12 hours later because I was so quiet, they forgot about me. At the hospital, yeah. After they did my sonogram, they completely forgot about me because I was just so quiet. Yeah, you gotta love New York City hospitals. They're complete trash. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys, if you're medical professionals, but New York City is complete trash. But I was so quiet. They forgot about me and they discharged me and they said, "Oh, you'll be fine. Just follow up with your doctor." Next day, the next one was gone.
Oh, wow.
And I snapped. It literally went from the start of the best year of my life to I wanted everything to be over.
This was in August.
And this was in August. And what bothered me is that my son's birthday is August 3rd, my living son, who's going to be 11 this year. His birthday is August 3rd. The day that I miscarried was his original due date. He was supposed to be coming out August 7th. So I miscarried on the 7th and the 8th. And it just, I didn't know how to process. I must have cut off so many people. I stopped posting. My followers are now asking, are you okay? Is everything all right? Because I didn't tell them anything. I didn't tell anybody anything. I snapped so bad they ended up having to put me on psych meds. And I just had this bad reaction. I forgot which one it was.
Did you go into a depression again?
I went into a serious depression. I was just argumentative. I was fighting people. I didn't want to eat. I was practically trying to starve myself.
Were you also running at that point, trying to run? So no, you just shut down?
I just completely shut down. And it was to a point where I woke up I don't know what morning it was, because every day was kind of like meshing together at that point. And it didn't help that one of my closest friends, 3 hours, and it wasn't his fault, he didn't know, 3 hours after everything had happened, like with both of the babies being gone, he's like, "Hey sis," he's like, my wife and I are pregnant. And I was like, well, and I mean, this is literally just the psychosis talking. And I was like, well, at least my babies will be your child's guardian angel. And I hung up the phone on him. And he knew something was wrong. So thankfully, he knew he's known me since childhood. So he didn't take anything of it. He was just more concerned of what's going on. And I told my husband, and I told like a small group of friends, I was like, I'm done with this running. I was like, I'm done with running. I'm done with this fitness kick. I was like, it was nice while it lasted. They got their 15 minutes. I'm leaving all this behind. And it took like 2 weeks for people to really get into my head and say, hey, you should still go for it.
Well, so where did that feeling come from?
I was so tired of being desensitized. I think I became desensitized from all of the miscarriages. I was already content in my head that my son was going to be my only. And it was like false hope. Every 5 minutes, I'm, hey, you're pregnant. And as quick as I find out I'm pregnant, as quick as I would lose it. I mean, it will always be first trimester. And I found out these babies were close to second. They were so heavily close to second. So I'm like, not only am I being robbed of the experience of knowing I'm pregnant, I'm not even going to I'm losing 2 this time. It just took me out of the desensitization mode to, I'm just done with this. I just want them to take out everything.
But why did you want to stop running and be fit? Did you just think like,
I just felt like my life was over.
Like,
Yeah.
screw it.
I screw everything.
If I can't take care of myself and be fit and this still happens, then just.
Because it throws out every ounce of optimism. Like the thing is, and I hope I don't trigger anybody by saying this, when you lose a kid that you physically saw, it's so hard to say that. When you lose a kid that you physically saw, at least you had the time to bond with them, even if it's for 5 minutes. When you miscarry, there is no grave, there's no ashes, there's no description, there's no, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. It's literally pick up the pieces and go on. Even when I was looking for counselors and I was looking for that, when I started feeling myself slip and I was like, okay, I'm going down, I'm going a little bit dark than I'm used to. And I was desperate for looking for counselors. There's no dedicated counselor out there for people who are grieving because they miscarriage. You don't find this when people are actually, they do abortions. You don't find therapists for this. You get a general therapist, and then you have to talk with this person about, hey, I lost this kid that I never got to meet.
Interesting. Yeah. I have friends who've miscarried, who've gone into deep depression. And you're right. I don't think that they had anybody but each other, maybe through forums or through Facebook or whatever.
No, exactly. But there's no dedicated professional towards it. And it's like you're lost. And depending on the type of person that you are, even as much of an extrovert as I am, this wasn't something that I really wanted to open up to people. But the psychosis, somehow I found myself typing up this blog while I was underneath the influence of the medication, and I went manic and started typing up really cryptic blogs, and all these people were just like, I'm so sorry, of whatever you're going through. Cause I think I was like hinting it, and I never deleted the blog. Like I can't even go back to those 2 blogs. Like I literally, after they changed my medication for like a couple of weeks, I was like, holy crap, did I really just tell all these people that I miscarried? By that point, it was already out there. And when I was starting to get to a little bit like a day that I was starting to feel better, here goes my doctor, who's now my regular gynecologist. He was an ER doctor. He contacts me out of nowhere and he says, I need you to come to the office like right now. And I'm like, can it wait? And he's like, no. He's like, Mrs. Snell, no, this can't wait. I need you to come up here today. So I'm like, great. I'm like, what else can you tell me? I'm like, what are you going to tell me? I'm like, what I have cancer, or something like that, and I go up there and he does this examination. And the look on his face was more a mixture of frustration. And he's like, you're practically a textbook study for endometriosis. And I'm like, what? Like, because it wasn't a term that I haven't heard before.
And nobody ever told you.
Nobody ever told me. I've been going through severe menstrual cramps since I was 9 years old. 9. And I would go to the doctor and their diagnosis is take birth control pills. Birth control pills almost gave me a stroke. And this was 2 or 3 years ago. I went from running 25 to 50 miles a week to not being able to walk up my steps on Mother's Day to go celebrate with my family. I was just so out of breath, and I started bleeding for 10 days straight. And the signs of you going through a stroke and, induced by birth control pills is you start getting these drastic headaches. And like in the beginning, when you start taking birth control pills, that can happen. It shouldn't go on for 10 days. I was bleeding for 10 days. I was getting lightheaded. I was starting to see spots. I was getting winded. This headache was just sitting at the top of my head to the point where I couldn't function. And then I eventually couldn't see for like parts of the day. And I called my doctor, my den doctor, and he's like, get off of it right now. And I had ended up having to do an aspirin regimen where I had to do that for 60 days just to thin out my blood because I was clotting. So I'm like, all right.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And I'm like, birth control is not an option. So now here I am stuck with these cramps and you're just telling me fibroids. And I'm like, hey, to be very TMI, I'm growing hair out of everywhere right now. I'm like, I'm growing a 5 o'clock shadow. What's going on here? I'm like, I was like, and I mean, I was just so irate. I'm like, I just went from a $5 wax to 20. What's going on here? I'm like, I don't have money to just keep plucking my face. And
when did this happen?
And this is like literally the facial hair started kicking in after my son.
So that comes with endometriosis.
It comes with, endometriosis comes with hormonal changes. It comes along with depression. And it was like an aha moment when my current gynecologist actually diagnosed me. He was like, it comes with mood swings. I kept going to therapists. I was like, I feel crazy. And that was literally what I would tell them. I'm like, and they're like, you're fine. It's like, you're very vocal. You're telling us what's going on. You're not closed off. Like, you're going to be just fine. And I'm like, you're telling me I'm going to be just fine. But I'm like, there's at least 2 weeks out of the month that I don't want to get out of bed. And I can't figure out why. Nobody's done anything to me. I'm waking up. I'm feeling irritable. I'm depressed. The pain that kicks in, not even the day of your period, the weeks before your menstrual, it was paralyzing. And I chalked it up as this is my sciatica, which is the condition that I have with my back, which it triggers headaches at the top of your head all the way down to your toes. So I was like, it's the sciatica. And then I kept scapegoating every other illness. I'm like, it's the sciatica. It's the fibroids that's doing it. The fibroids, I have 21 of them. It has to be this. It has to be that. It has to be this. I'm getting tested. Like they have like an internal sonogram that they can use. Like it looks like pardon my expression. It looks like a little dildo that's kind of going inside of you. And it's like, it's very weird. And they're testing out my testosterone level. They said maybe it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. You get tired of being poked and prodded every 5 minutes, and you feel less of a human and more like a science experiment.
And they're still not finding anything.
And they found nothing. They even thought I had thyroid because I was gaining weight and then losing weight, and that comes along with endometriosis. And he's just looking at me and he's like, "Who are your doctors?" He's like, "Did you get this test?" He's like, "You obviously got Pap smears and this and this." And he's like, "You have a cyst." He's like, "You have a cyst on your," he's like, "You have an ovarian cyst that needs to be removed." And I was like, "Is this the reason why I miscarried so much?" And he's like, "Yeah."
So this got diagnosed in what, August?
This was August, that same month.
And then are they able to do anything for that?
Yeah. So I have marks on my stomach. So I have about 4 incisions. So there's different procedures that you can do. The one that I got was a laparoscopic surgery. So it's very small marks that they cut into areas of your stomach. Like some people go through the belly button. Mine was so congested because basically with endometriosis, it clogs up your fallopian tubes. And if it's as severe as mine,
because it had gone untreated for 20 years.
20 years. So now, 20 years is hard to kind of unclog. Like it's like unclogging your pipes, 20 years worth of it. So now my fallopian tubes were so inflamed that they literally had to take out some of my fibroids right along with it. The reason why I was having problems, like I was thinking, like, why am I having problems urinating? Why am I having problems using the bathroom? All of these issues came from endometriosis. By the time he showed me these, it looks like dots on the screen. It looked like red dots. And he's like, all these red dots are inflammation. This is where the endometriosis is at. It took what was supposed to be a 45-minute procedure to 3 hours. Because it was everywhere. It was fighting organs. I was just so irritated. And now I'll have to go back home and I have to explain to my husband and my loved ones, hey, the reason why I am not a second time or third time mom is because endometriosis. And it was the first time my husband's not emotional. It was the first time I ever saw my husband break that bad.
Because he was disappointed or because he was relieved?
He was just hurt. No, he was completely hurt. He's just like, you've gone through all this and we've lost kids over and over and over. He's watched me go from, and the thing is, sometimes men, and then not even so much men, just in a relationship, sometimes you have that partner that feels like they have to be that strength for you, that backbone at that moment. My husband's not very emotional. He doesn't show his emotions much. So to see him have that moment of breaking down, it just tore at me. And I was just like, yeah, I'm done with this running. I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. I was just like, I just felt the pessimistic part of me kicking right back in. Why bother? I was like, if all these bad things are going to happen to me when I'm getting my health together, I have an active lifestyle, I've changed my eating habits, I'm being a healthier person, yet I'm still being crucified for it. Why bother?
So how did you get out of it?
People.
Your community?
Yeah, it was just everybody, people because I chose to, at one point, I want to say one of my best friends, his name is Rain. He talked to me. He said, okay, you're talking about you want to leave the community. You don't want to do the running anymore. He's like, why not leave with a bang? This is how he tricked me into it. He's like, why not leave with a bang? He's like, how about you do all 3 of your races and then you can just retire? And I was just like, okay. I'm like, I don't know if I'll put it in the terms of retirement. It's not like it's a career, but I was like, all right, sure. I'm like, you know what? Maybe you're right. So I put up what people didn't know was essentially like me counting my last days of doing this. I told myself, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. But I ended up putting up like this procrastinator plan of someone that I literally only had 10 weeks until the Chicago Marathon. So I put up a 10 week, a 10 week, 14 weeks, and a 16-week plan of taking me through 2 marathons and an ultra marathon plan. And people were reading the story, and I just laid it all out there. I'm like, hey, listen, I miscarried, and this is how I'm feeling. And I openly talked about my depression. It brought on a different audience. And then next thing I knew, other people who were grieving started responding to me. They started writing me, and they're like, thank you so much for talking about this, because I didn't know how to process this after 14 years. Every time I Google search online, I can't find an article of how do I process miscarrying. And one of the people that reached out to me, and we're now really, really good friends, I ended up meeting her in Colorado. She's like, thank you for talking about the endometriosis, because I literally had to get the surgery to get everything removed. And I didn't realize how many people, because at that point, I was just looking at it as, this is it. This is my last album. I'm going into retirement. I'm just going to be that girl that happened to be, that was featured on a BuzzFeed article, and that's it. And then next thing I know, I'm doing a New York City marathon, because I did Chicago. I felt good, even though the humidity out there kind of kicked my ass. I'm like, here I am back in New York City. And this is the moment that essentially changed my entire following and my entire life. I'm running. I was like, all right, here I am at the 21st and 22nd mile. And at that point at the New York City Marathon is when you go right back into Manhattan. It's like Adam Clayton Powell Park or something like that, or whatever, and around this area. And this guy, which a lot of people are pissed off with the description that I gave. And I'm like, it was an actual description. It was a tall, balding white man. And
that's fair.
Yeah. And they're like, that's racist. And I'm like,
that's racist?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got
I
got some really negative feedback, like from guys. That's kind of racist to put out a description. I'm like, the guy was tall and balding. I'm like, I could have said he was an asshole and balding. I'm like, no, it's like, I'm giving a descriptor. But this guy heckled me. And at first, I didn't think I hate to say it. By that point, with BuzzFeed and all of the crazy feedback that I was getting with my blogs, I'm used to my hecklers being online. I call them keyboard warriors. They go behind a keyboard and they type in 160 characters or less, and they're like, F you, you're fat, ha ha ha, you're ugly. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, so is your mom, So I was so used to my hecklers, and again, I became desensitized. I'm like, what else new are they going to say? To actually have a heckler in your face at a marathon. I was just like, how atrocious. And what bothered me the most was that was the mile I dedicated towards my twins. And it sent me in so much of a rage. I just wanted to hit this guy.
So you stopped?
I stopped because I was like, no, I didn't hear what I think I heard. I was like, all right. And he's like, it's going to take your fat ass forever, huh? And those are his literal words. And I was like, what did you say to me? And he was bold. And he turned around, he stopped, and he looked at me, and he's just like, it's going to take your fat ass forever, huh? And we just went.
And he wasn't even running.
He wasn't running.
He was just hanging out.
You're a spectator. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, don't get me wrong. I love my spectators, but not him. I could have lived without him. I was like, what made you say that? And at this point, I started getting closer. I felt it. I was like, oh, my New York attitude is kicking in. I was like, I want to hit him. In the back of my head, I'm like, this is New York Roadrunners. I have a membership with them. If I hit him.
Right. And you also don't want to be on BuzzFeed for that reason.
Exactly. I'm like, I was like, this story is going to go so bad if somebody catches a picture. Now we live in the age, where technology.
Yeah, who knows?
Everybody got a cell phone. I'm like, all I can hear in my head is world star. I'm just like, oh, great. Here I am. I'm going to be this short woman that's hitting this tall guy, and he's getting knocked out, and he's like 20, 30 years older than me. And everybody's like, how could you hit that man like that? Nobody's going to see the other story that this man cursed me out or anything. They're just going to see this angry, and all I kept thinking was the stereotypes. This angry black woman, this angry fat black woman knocking out this guy during a marathon. I'm like, I can't do it.
It would have been kind of awesome, though.
Yeah, it was like everything. Yeah, I was like thinking. I was like, well, I always think about. I'm like, what if this story would have went a different way if I would just knocked his ass out? Like,
yeah,
it's just so terrible. But
there was kind of a happy ending with it, right?
Yeah, because I had two ladies that were on the course, and they saw it, and they was like, Miss, let's let it go. I ended up running. I ended up seeing some of my friends in the last couple of miles, and I told them, and I was just so angry. I'm angry tweeting and angry like messaging, and I'm like,
and that moved your butt too, because when I run and I've got like an email that I'm writing in my head because I'm angry at somebody, I'm like, hey man, like 5 miles just went by, like, that feeling. Yeah.
Yes. Like, I mean, because I felt my little inner keyboard warrior. I'm like, I was like, F this guy. I'm like, okay. I'm like, and let me talk about him. So here I am. I'm sharing on my Facebook page, and everybody's like, nah, screw him, girl. Like, keep running. You got 3 more miles to go. This and this. Before I knew it, the marathon was over. And I thought that was it. The 2 weeks later, I ended up doing the 60K. And and I felt great, even though it sucked like hell because it's a pavement 60K. It's not a trail run. So it's a little bit harder on your feet. So I'm just like, I'm like, okay, let me get this over with. But I got this email she's a supermodel from the 80s, and her name is Veronica. Gosh, she was like one of the first Black supermodels. And she contacts me. And I'm like, this has got to be a joke. So I start Google searching. I'm like, where is this person writing me from? And I saw the ending, and I'm like, oh, this is real. The person writes me from the Root, and she says, hey, how you doing? So I end up speaking with the editor. And originally the story was supposed to be this new column of the Root called The Glow Up.
Online magazine.
Yeah, it's an online magazine. So there was supposed to be this new section. They were coming out to empower women. That's part of the LGBTQIA community, people who are just doing phenomenal things, just uplifting women. And they were going to interview me about my blog. They're like, oh my God, your blog is so funny. And this and this, we would love to feature you. And they was like, but you're a great writer. Is there any topics that come to mind that you would like to write about? So I'm like, I never wrote for anyone on a professional level. I was like, I know what it is to write as a secretary because I've had those type of jobs. I'm like, I don't know about writing. And they're like, anything that comes to mind, just throw it at us. We'll tell you if it's a yay or nay. So I'm like, so the 2 topics that came to mind was talking about my son, of being a parent to a type 1 diabetic. And I'm like, I don't know if it's going to really fit, this platform, but we'll keep it in mind for later on. So I was like, well, I did kind of get heckled during this marathon, and I said this nonchalantly, and she's like, tell me more. I didn't think it was going to resonate. I was like, this doesn't fit their platform. I'm like, nobody's going to give a damn about this story except for runners. I'm like, runners are going to be outraged, and then 15 minutes later, people are going to forget about it. I wrote the article, 800 words or less, the best I possibly can, because I'm a rambler, and it came out, I want to say like the week of Thanksgiving. It was like a Thursday it was a Thursday when it came out. And next thing I knew, I started seeing 30,000 hits. And I mean, this was like literally in like 6 hours, like less than 6 hours.
30,000 hits online.
On their page.
On their page.
On their page alone. Yeah, because they give you like the statistics when you're a writer. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay. I'm like, that's nice, But then all of a sudden the email started rolling in. Then I was like, why is my phone, like I'm not used to my phone alerts going off so bad. And it's just going off ping, 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 ping. All of a sudden I had this part on Facebook that I didn't even know existed. There's the other box.
Yeah.
So when the person's not your friend. So it went from 16 to 40 to 50 people. By the end of the day, I must have had received 100 emails just on Facebook alone. Then I started seeing all these followers, people who were looking me up. So I'm like, wow, I'm going viral. So next thing I know, Friday morning kicks in, and that was my serious reality check. I walk out my house, I'm getting ready to take my son. Like, no, this had to be the week after Thanksgiving then, because I took my son to school. And in the middle of the street, this lady freaks out. It's like, oh my God, you're the girl that wrote the article. She's like, I recognize your hair and you look so strong and powerful. And she's like ranting. And I'm like, lady, I need to bring my son to school.
Somebody in your neighborhood.
Somebody in the neighborhood.
I love that. And what an inspiration you are. Yeah, it's great.
And she's like rambling like at rapid speed. And I'm like, I talk quick, but you're talking quicker than me. And it's freaking me out. And like my son is excited. He's like, Mom, you're a star. And I'm like, no, the hell I'm not. I'm bringing you to school. And it was 3 more people like that. Then it was 4 more people. And I mean, this is within an 8-block radius of me walking my son to school. And I'm just like, holy crap, this thing really is viral. I go back home and now I'm at 60,000 hits on their website. But not only that, I come back home and people are like, D.L. Hughley is talking about you. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Then I had media outlets, then People magazine I was doing my regular routine. My routine was I get my son ready for school. I say bye to my husband. I'm going to drop him off. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out. I go to the gym and people at Blink Fitness never said a word to me a day in their lives. And they're just clapping at the gym.
No way.
And they're saying hi. And people are like, I just wanted to shake your hand. And I mean, these are people of all body types, backgrounds, just saying thank you for sharing your story. You should hit hit that asshole in the face, and they're giving me feedback. And now I got People magazine in my inbox saying, hey, we just wrote a story about you. Like, they were the only people that actually, the few people that reached out to me. Yeah. And it's like, hey, we already wrote this story about you. Like, I don't even have that much stuff about me on the internet for you to write a story.
You do now.
I do now.
Yeah.
And they're like, what picture would you like me to use? And I'm like, are you asking me or are you telling me? And I'm like, all right, go ahead. And I'm like, this is just like one story. I'm still in disbelief and shock. Next thing I know, it's 2 articles. It's 4 articles. I have the Griot. I have, it was D.L. Hughley's the GD section. Then there was, Plus Model magazine. And I'm just like, these are magazines I would have never thought would cover my story. Then podcasts kicked in and it changed my entire schedule. But as quick as I was happy about it, it was as quick as it scared me. And I'm like,
well, you'd also in your head retired.
Yeah, in my head I was like, I'm done.
Oh shit! Like, yeah, now I got to keep going.
I got to keep going. I'm like, all these people are watching. When should I tell them that I actually quit?
So you were still thinking that?
I was like, when should I tell them I actually quit? So now I'm reading all these emails and people are telling me their most heartfelt, like deepest hurtful stories. And they're like, I don't know why. Like, I mean, I had people that said, I don't even know why I'm opening up to you, but you're so transparent with your story. I feel like I should share mine. I've had people that told me everything from I lost my kid to being suicidal to being heckled because they were fat ballerinas, or I didn't win this challenge, because people were saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing this. I've had somebody that told me I shouldn't be a marathoner, and I wanted to be a marathoner since I was 20. I'm now 46. And I think because of you and your story, I want to go back out there and do running. And I'm just like, you don't know me, and instead of looking at it as a beautiful thing, I crashed again. And here I am waking up with beer bottles again. I relapsed like that entire week. It scared me so bad because I'm just like, I can't walk in my own neighborhood. I'm not normal anymore.
What month was that?
This was November going into December. I was like, I'm not normal anymore. Then Blink Fitness was like, hey, would you like to do this ad with us? And I was like, that would be cool. I'm like, that one I was really happy about. I'm like, this is my neighborhood gym. I'm like, sure. Like you got franchises like everywhere, in New York City and in parts of Jersey or whatever. I'm like, all right, I'll do that. But then I started getting other offers. Then I had people that asked me to break down the experience over and over again. You don't realize how traumatic that is to go through the story, because while they're inspired by the story, this is my real life. And the major aspect for me is, while everybody was highlighting the fact that I pushed through as a plus size marathoner, I looked at it as a grieving mom. I was like, I don't have my kids. I'm like, so while I'm going viral, mentally I'm crumbling because I have to tell this story over and over about losing my kids. And I'm just like, I'm still a grieving mom. I'm still going to counseling for this. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do tomorrow. I still wake up in the morning and I cry. There are days that I don't want to be here. And it's hard to admit that. Because you would think that, some people tell you advice like, you should be here for your family. You should be here for your friends. No, the reality, as a person who's attempted suicide several times, you have to find a way to be here for yourself. The most popular thing that I hear from people is, if you need me, feel free to give me a call. And then when you make that call, I'm too busy, or you might be viewed as you're being melodramatic, especially someone like me. They're like, you're so open and happy. You're so visibly happy. There's no way you could be depressed. You don't fit the qualifications of a person that looks clinically depressed. And the reality of it is that the strongest appearing looking people are the ones who are struggling, because if everybody else is grabbing onto you like a life raft, who's keeping you up?
Just swing back to the beginning of the conversation with Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain being we are fresh on the heels of that. We look to those people thinking that they are successful and strong and inspirations.
They're still human.
Yeah.
They're still human.
They're still human.
And that's the part that people forget, that we're still human. It's like, especially when you're, because I had people that literally took pictures of me. Like, I was on a train that one, like, it was like the second week. I thought it was going to die down by that point. Second week, I had, I was like, oh God, I'm doing this downward spiral thing again where I'm starting to drink. I was like, okay, I'm taking out every ounce of access of alcohol away from me. I'm emptying out all the bottles. And I'm like, I'm not doing this because otherwise I'm going to need AA after this. End up going on the train. I think I had drifted off. I woke up and this lady is taking a picture of me on the train as I am sleeping. And she's sitting next to me and she's like, hey, you could have just tapped me and told me. I was like, and it was just so creepy. So my husband didn't realize how bad this was. He thought I was being melodramatic. He's like, you have a wild imagination and you tell very colorful stories like your dad. So I kind of don't believe you, even though I believe you. And he ended up going for a run with me, which is something that he doesn't typically, now he does. He doesn't typically do because he injured his knee, I think, when he was doing running in junior high school to high school. He used to do hurdles. Like, this man used to run fast. Like, I was like, oh, I'm the last person in the family I thought would be a runner. So here he is. He's like, listen, I'll go for a run with you, being that it's nighttime, and we'll do like 6 or 7 miles, and that'll be that. We make it to 3.5, 4 miles. I hit downtown Brooklyn. This lady is screaming. This is 8 o'clock at night, at the top of her lungs. Oh my God, you're so amazing. Oh my God, I can't believe I saw you. And she's hooping and hollering and crying. And I'm like, Eric, this is my new life. I'm like, I can't do this. It freaked me out. Like, some people live for moments like this. I'm not one of them.
Did you get over it?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
Because eventually I had to like detach myself from it and say this story was bigger than just me. While this may have been my story, I want to say I was amused for everyone else who's been in similar situations. I connected with great people like John Young. He's a dwarf who is an incredible runner. I recently met him during the Vermont City Marathon, and he talks about these things, how people use, they're offensive terms, midget, or it's just disgusting to hear how people feel comfortable saying certain things, down to people who are plus size, who hear things like, you're too fat to be running and it's going to damage your knees because you have more weight on you. But then it's like, if we do something to improve our health, we're wrong. So now I've increased what I call them trolls. Well, I've increased my troll rate by 50% now, because now for every 10 happy letters I get 2 idiots that hit up my inbox that tell me you're a disgrace and I remember when I was running in the 70s, and the only people that get medals were the ones who hit first, second, and third place. Everybody else don't get anything. And I'm like, what's wrong with everybody feeling good for what they accomplished? I challenged those things, and I realized the story was much bigger than me. And instead of it was my fear. It was my fear of, I have too many people watching my journey. So when I do fail, because it's going to be a moment that I'm going to fail at something.
As we all do.
Yeah, as we all do, because we're human. I was like, it's going to be a moment I'm going to fail at something, and now I'm going to have an audience. I'm like, this is not the audience I signed up for. I was comfortable with my 4,000 followers. I was like, all right, 4,000 strangers just looking at my journey. I got, at the time I had like less than 1,500 people that were my friends on Facebook. And I go from 1,500 to damn that close to 3,000 people, and people who are following my journey, who are eating at my blog posts, and they're analyzing every word of, well, you said this. And then all of a sudden I have people who are criticizing, why are you calling yourself fat when you're not fat in my eyes? And I'm like, honey, to me, I am comfortable with the term. Now, if you're not comfortable with it, I'm never going to push that agenda on you of you have to embrace that word. No, you do not have to embrace that word. That word can stay a slur to you if you want. But for me, I am a 200 plus pound woman with a little bit of extra skin and a little extra fat. I am very comfortable with the term. Why not? Why not? Literally the slogan on my site is where fat is not a curse word. I'm fit, I'm fat, I'm an athlete. It is my gateway and my opening to others to let them know that regardless of what body you are in, you are capable of something. And to some people, that scares them. Like, how dare you challenge 20 years of what I've been told was wrong, and you're trying to make it right. I've met hecklers. There have been a few times I've actually met people who have harassed me online. I had a guy that called me the N-word. So many different creative ways that I was just like, whew, I'm losing count. And he was just so irritated because he expected me to troll him the way that I trolled people on BuzzFeed, that I refuse to be nasty about it. Like, that going viral taught me different ways of how to talk to different people. That you cannot treat everybody that says something like a target, because they might just be a victim in their own lives. Where I realized that some of my hecklers look just like me. They have the same size, or they have the same disability, or they have the same struggles, or when they're going back home to an abusive family that's telling them that they're nothing, that they're worthless. Or you have someone who might be smaller frame and they're like, why am I not being worshipped? I feel, or or the biggest one that I get now is with body positivity, where people feel as if body positivity means screw skinny people. And I'm like, no, as a person who used to be the former quote unquote, and I hate this term, skinny bitch, as the former skinny bitch, I'm telling you, I don't like it across the board. And we need to all respect each other's space. We need to learn how to respect each other's choices, our lifestyles. You do not know what the next person is going through, because once upon a time when I was in high school, I couldn't gain weight to save my life. I was so tired of people telling me, go eat a cheeseburger. Would you eat twigs and sticks for breakfast? You only drink water all day, and you must be eating salads. And I'm just like, I'm trying to gain weight like everybody else. I was like trying to eat junk food. That's how I actually started gaining the weight, because I was so tired of people harassing me for being small that I ended up gaining the weight after the miscarriages. That now I'm like, oh, I got to this. I hate to say it, like in the 90s into millennium, it was this desired body type. Like you had to have cute breasts, like it could be small or whatever, but you had to have like this Coca-Cola bottle shape, and your booty has to be big, and your legs had to you had to have these killer legs, and it's like, that's what I want to look like. Instead of saying, no, I don't have all that, but I look beautiful the way I am. Those are the conversations that we need to start, not just with our daughters, but we need to have those with our sons too.
And the perception that the sons are having of other women too, just for that reason.
Yeah. It bothers me. I feel like there are certain things about this movement that we're so on point when it comes down to uplifting people of different racial backgrounds, people that's in the LGBTQIA community, but I struggle with, I don't hear the male perspective as much. And it's like a gift and a curse, because in ways we hear so much about male, the promotion of how men are strong. But what about the community of what my co-host and I, of the Long Run, I'm pretty much underneath the 300 pounds and running podcast. What we promote is we laugh about it, but it's less laughing at the hurt sometimes. And I realize that we sometimes do it a lot. We talk about the quote unquote male titties.
I've heard that podcast. I've heard him talk about it. Yeah.
And the thing is that I find that there's a demographic of men who don't fit the mold of what a big, lovable, plus size guy is supposed to look like. When you think of plus size guy, you think of him being solid and, oh my God, he makes me feel protected, and he's a teddy bear, and I feel safe around him. But what about the guys that do have the extra folds of skin, on their chest? What about the guys that have extra layers? Are they not are they not the sex appeal that you're looking for, or do they not fit the mold? And I love that he puts up selfies of himself, and he takes off his shirt and he puts it out there, and it helped other people who look just like him open up and say, thank you for representing us. So there's so many layers that I think that we're heading with this movement, but we have a long way to go. And I don't want any audience to feel like, here I am, I'm this loud black girl, from Brooklyn, that just happen to be plus size and, happen to have a disability, that's saying, hey, hear me roar and screw everybody else. That's definitely not the case. Like that, I want everybody to feel empowered just the way they are, and start listening to some of these people who are throwing out that criticism your way, and just question, where is this coming from? It might not even be about you.
I think that's a great, really high note to wrap things up on too. I think that's fabulous. Before we do wrap up, I have a couple of quick things. First, because this is the Be Bold podcast. Tell me what it means to you to be bold.
To be bold. Be bold is to be yourself, to embrace everything about yourself, the good, the bad, and the straight up ugly. So many times we want to glorify certain aspects of our life to the point where we are not forgiving to ourselves about the things that maybe we come up short in. Acknowledge those things, question those things. I can't say it enough. Question those things of what's going wrong, the things that you want to fix, but embrace yourself at your present state so you can love yourself even more further on down the line.
That's beautiful. Finally, where can people find you?
Oh, man.
Where would you direct people?
Okay, so definitely you can go and visit me on my blog, www.runningfatchef.com. I have recipes on there. I have my crazy fitness journeys on there. I have like 2 separate blogs where one is dedicated towards my triathlon. My journey to my triathlon is called Half Dead Goldfish to Metamorphosing Shark. This is a real title that I just woke up and I came up with. And then there's the actual general blog that's there that talks about my fitness adventures, some of the things that comes up, questions that people have that they throw out there that I answer for them, and the very TMI stuff like the gingerbread man, which is also known as runner's diarrhea. So, you can find me there. But on social media, you can find me at www.facebook.com/runningfatchef. That is my fan page. Now, if you go to my personal page, which is Latoya Snell, I am a little bit, I do talk about politics and all that stuff, so I tell people buyer beware. When it comes to Instagram, you can find me at IAMLSHAUNTAY. That's I am L Shantae. I really need to make these things like all the same, but I'm working on it.
I know. I'm the same way. I'm all over the place. But you know what? I'm going to link to all of those in the show notes too. And thank you so much for, I would say, being here, but thank you for welcoming me into your home and your neighborhood and everything. I really appreciate it. And I got to meet your son too, who is, you said he's 11?
Yeah, he's going on 11.
Yeah. Smart as a whip.
Oh, yes.
Just a confident little firecracker. I could tell just in the few minutes that I chatted with him. He's awesome. So thanks for that and your time today too. I really appreciate it. And just really, thank goodness you have just powered through and you're keeping going because you're inspiring so many people, with your story and with your ongoing fitness and all this great stuff. And there's your husband too. But thank you for everything. Just really appreciate it. So, and we'll definitely stay in touch and come do a marathon. Come do the Quadzilla with me in Seattle.
You're doing Seattle, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing the Seattle Marathon.
Oh, you are?
I'm doing the Seattle Marathon this November. Is that the Quadzilla?
The Quadzilla, so that's on Sunday.
Yes.
The Seattle Marathon's on Sunday. Quadzilla is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, so you just tempted me. That's just poking the bear right there.
I know. You got to talk to your sponsor about that and
yes.
get yourself out there.
Oh, yeah. I think I'm going to be doing that then.
Now I have to do it again.
Dun.
I know. I'll see you in Seattle.
Yes.
Thanks, Latoya. I've got to hand it to her ability to be so out there and so forthcoming. She mentions you can friend her on Facebook, but if you do so, you have to be ready for her insightful posts and brutal honesty. Latoya is just a beautiful soul who is finding her way, as we all are, and she's doing it publicly, so kudos to her. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it on social media, and you can use the hashtag #BeBold, or simply share the episode with a friend. These conversations are so important, and I love knowing that more and more people are getting to hear them. I'm also interested in hearing your guest ideas for the podcast, so if you know of anyone or you yourself would be a good fit, simply fill out the guest submission form on the BeBoldPodcast.com website. I only record in person and often record in Seattle, but as you know, I travel a lot, and that gives me the chance to meet up with people on the road. For show notes, check out the BeBoldPodcast.com website for each episode and sign up for email alerts each time a new episode comes out. While you're online, go to the Be Bold Podcast Facebook page and give that a like so you can follow that. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook. I'm WanderGal on Instagram and Wanderluster on Twitter. You can find out more about me by visiting wanderlustandlipstick.com. Sign up for my newsletter on the Wanderlust and Lipstick site and you'll receive a series of tips for making your travels safer. I often have giveaways for some pretty awesome travel gear, and this month it's an Eagle Creek carry-on bag valued at something like $160, so it's well worth your time to check it out. You can find out about the tours I lead at wandertours.com. We've got a couple of women-only tours to India coming up, one to North India this fall and one to South India early next year, and space is limited on both of those. We've also got a bit of space on our co-ed trip to Papua New Guinea in 2019. Ladies, you can join us on our Be Bold Facebook group. We've now got over 2,600 members in that group. It's a community of amazing women who are sharing their wins, sometimes their struggles. We're learning from each other and sharing some great information and encouragement. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Be Bold podcast. Until next time, be bold.